Cheers, guys. Everyone hear me okay? Good stuff. So my name is Petar Jovetic. As Mikey mentioned, I'm the head of SEO at Impression. Hopefully that's more to do with professional merit than it is to do with the size of my massive head. So for this talk, we're going to be deviating away slightly from automation, from attribution, and from PPC in particular, and looking at creating strategies for incremental gains, and in particular for SEO strategies. So the reason we decided to do this talk and focus on incremental gains was we noticed kind of increasingly in the industry, it was kind of increasing in popularity. Also kind of at Impression as a department in SEO, we've kind of been heavily investing and massively subscribed to this idea of incremental gains. Typically we'll find it leads to a comparable, if not more of an ROI than higher kind of budget, higher impact campaigns. So to discover kind of why we're leaning increasingly more towards incremental gains, I think it's important to understand where we've come from, because I almost think it's a byproduct of that. So web search, SEO, where are we now? And where have we come from? So the dark ages. So this is kind of pre-2012, pre-2011, kind of pre-Google Panda, Google Penguin. It was marketer in the loosest sense of the term, marketer versus bot. And at this point, it was very much kind of gamified. It was about kind of gaming the system, getting what you wanted out of the algorithm, and very, not at all user-led. At this point, Google changed around this time, kind of Google changed the goalposts with the release of Google Panda and Google Penguin. Basically a call to SEOs, a call to digital marketers saying we need to kind of focus on quality rather than quantity. Whereas before we would launch a campaign, perhaps pre-kind of Penguin, pre-Panda. If we talk about attribution, it was very kind of linear. You would invest in kind of link building en masse, often kind of opting for lower quality. Just securing the link was kind of good enough. And in terms of results, if you kind of were to do that correctly and en masse enough, you rest assured you would be kind of increasing in your organic visibility. So with Google Panda, Google Penguin, moving the goalposts, there was this kind of shift towards being user-focused. And basically a call to SEOs to clean your act up, essentially. Start kind of becoming more in line with conventional, with more modern kind of marketing methods. So with that, our response around 2012 was content marketing. And this is still kind of prevalent today. It's something we still invest in. And this was started around the time of 2012, and this was when kind of SEO and content marketing became largely synonymous. So with that, when I'm talking about content marketing, it's working to this type of framework. So we'll build something over here on your site to provide value, to convey authority over here. So it could be anything from a blog post, or I mean, more typically in the context of SEO, it would usually be kind of your all singing and dancing, all bells and whistles, kind of highly visual, highly functional piece of content marketing. With the KPIs, if we're looking at purely from an SEO point of view, we're looking at kind of link acquisition in a bid to kind of increase authority. So that's kind of what we've been up to, I guess, since 2012. And I feel like increasingly, especially within the past 2 years, there have been some kind of caveats that have presented themselves. So namely, it's expensive. So here is a graph from PQ Media. Admittedly, it's kind of the best data I could find, but it's looking at kind of forecasts, and they forecasted the growth of content marketing in 2019 to be $313 billion globally. Granted, it's a forecast, take it with a pinch of salt, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is around this mark. For agencies like Impression, it presents a lot of opportunity, but for you guys working in-house, it comes with a really high price point. So proving ROI is difficult. We're already kind of on the back foot. Cool, moving forward. increasingly difficult to measure. Has anyone seen this study by Tom Capper at Distilled? No, Liam has. Pretty niche for a Wednesday morning, right? Okay, so it's basically looking at the, so I mentioned with content marketing, what we're doing, primary KPI from an SEO point of view is building links, kind of building authority. Tom Capper's recently been involved with this kind of at Distilled, looking at kind of the correlation using Spearman's rank, so correlation coefficient, looking at the correlation between domain authority and rankings. So there's three kind of sets of data here, one from May 2015, one from February 2017, and one from October 2018. So the one from May 2015, so 4 years ago, say, this was actually lifted from Moz and borrowed from a study Moz did. They looked at so 18,000 keywords across, and the site's ranking for those 18,000 keywords across the top 50 positions. And if we're using kind of Spearman's rank, already you can see even back in 2015, quite a weak correlation there at 0.26. Tom then replicated the study 2 years after using slightly different methodology. So instead of 18,000 keywords, his subset was much lower. He looked at around 5,000 and specifically looked at sites ranking on first page, so top 10 of Google. And he found the correlation was weaker still, so 0.07. That was in 2017, reran the experiment last year. So end of last year, October 2018, and as you can see, weaker still at 0.23. So what he found with his subset of keywords, especially for those that have a higher search volume, it became, whilst domain authority can be almost a qualifying factor to start ranking, once you actually start fighting for positions, say 5 to 1, it becomes less about that and more about, we'll see later, more about kind of actually incremental considerations. So with this, key takeaway, just increasingly difficult to measure. And then ultimately, saturated. Content marketing, not to play it down, I do really want to stress the point that it still certainly has its place, but it is increasingly saturated. Obviously, we're consuming more data than ever before. So this is a bit of data from The Atlantic, looking at how many articles are published per day across kind of notable publications. And you can see here the Washington Post at 500 per day, and then all the way down to BuzzFeed, 222 per day. And if I'm looking at that purely as an SEO purist, if we're looking at it from an authority perspective, yeah, you'll have that authority, great link equity to begin with, but as soon as kind of more stories start getting published, you're going to kind of like that article, that feature will sink deeper into the site, Google's going to crawl it less, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, at this point, 2016, say, saturation point. And this is around the time where we get into where people started to focus more on incremental gains. And it's part and parcel, I feel, with this renaissance period that we're currently in. So admittedly, I haven't, so this was originally coined by Mike King in the States from IPL Rank. He used it in the context of kind of the technical SEO renaissance, basically saying with increasing web technologies, which Ed will speak about later on, so we're doing more technical SEO auditing than ever before. Now, with the Renaissance period I'm referring to and the stress on incrementality, it's basically harking back to a back-to-basics approach and looking at the fundamentals. And really with SEO, just remembering fundamentally how web search and how a search engine works. So with that, with the search engine, quite simply, three kind of constructs going on. Firstly, you'll have the crawler, you'll have Googlebot. Primary, relatively simple piece of software, goes out, crawls the web, identifies and navigates through the web via hyperlinks, and then it retrieves kind of new and updated content from there. With the crawled information, it then pushes that to the indexer, where actually kind of process, where analysis actually starts to occur, where analysis of the link graph starts to occur. And then you have the kind of front end, you have the query engine, which is where kind of search queries are interpreted, the intent is interpreted, and largely the algorithm is the interplay between all these three. Sorry. Interplay between all these three. So as a user, as a searcher, you'd input a search. The query engine kind of interpret, look at the intent, relay back to the indexer to kind of retrieve the documents from the indexer, and then rank them accordingly. And this is kind of how we, as SEOs, how we process and digest that information. Everything to do with technical SEO, essentially that is satisfying the crawler. On the user side of it, it will be kind of improving user experience. Everything we do with kind of on-page and increasing relevance per page, that's to do with satisfying the indexer by and large. And from there, you're kind of really targeting your audience, giving them the kind of the information that they want to kind of, that they're searching for. And then the query engine, that's where we actually do this kind of the content marketing activity, the link acquisition, and to convey authority. It's really kind of satisfying the query engine, whilst also kind of building brand awareness. And this is almost the start of incrementality. So it's really kind of looking at these three constructs, knowing what we can do to satisfy these, but then also kind of looking at the finer details of all of them. Now this article, like, absolutely grinds my gears. It does my absolute head in when I see it. And this is absolutely not what I'm talking about. So this was published in 2016, so a fair while ago. Ironically, I reckon he built a shed load of backlinks from this because of the controversy it caused in the industry. But the idea that he's saying here, off the bat, kind of the role of SEO, the role technical SEO should play its makeup, and that's really not what I'm on about. With incrementality, we really need to look into the fine details and not disregard any aspect of SEO. But it's this kind of stuff that we are considering when creating strategies for incremental gains. And as you can see, it's something that Google themselves kind of preach. So this is a snippet taken from Think with Google, and the article is, so how Google actually does SEO. And off the bat, you can see for big SEO results, start small. It may sound simple, but focusing on small incremental changes to a website's overall SEO strategy really can produce noticeable gains over time. If you dig deeper, this was a snippet from Gary Iles, who is a webmaster trends analyst at Google. This was part of an AMA on Reddit that he recently participated in. Has anyone read this by any chance? No sweat. Definitely worth a read. I've linked to it here, so if you get a chance, when you get the slideshow, definitely look into it. So one Redditor on this AMA asked him kind of, what do you foresee the future of SEO to be? Kind of where would you like it to go? Amongst all this stuff that we're seeing now with voice search, with all that kind of stuff going on. All Gary's saying here is just, I wish SEOs just went back to basics, i.e. make that damn site crawlable. Again, kind of almost incrementality right there for you. And then even within the community, those that kind of practice SEO, those that have been kind of in the game for like 10, 20 years. This is Cyrus Shepherd, so formerly of Moz. So obviously kind of SEO heavyweight, a veteran. Here he's just kind of talking about the title tag, one small tag on a kind of piece of source code. Saying here how even just optimizing that still is one of the kind of most rewarding and highest ROI jobs that an SEO can do. And often kind of is something that can be kind of disregarded still. Similarly, here's Andy Drinkwater, ironically. So Andy Drinkwater has been in the game 20 years or so. Following on Twitter, he shares some really good content. But here he's really showing, all he did was focus on internal links. So just how kind of pages interlink between one another. With a budget of $11,000, he's able to increase organic visibility 3-4-fold. And that's just by looking at one thing. That's incrementality at its finest. Ed Wilson, sneakily amongst these SEO heavyweights, definitely stands tall amongst them, who you'll be hearing from later. I think this might resonate with someone in the audience as well. So here, Ed, kind of with the client had some JavaScript rendering issues and how kind of Google was crawling them and indexing them, and ultimately it was kind of suboptimal the way it was implemented. Ed went for kind of a server-side rendering approach, ultimately improved the efficiency, the way Google could crawl the site, index the site, and then rank it. And you can see here, just by focusing on one aspect with JavaScript, you can see kind of this is looking at Search Console and impressions there. Justin Briggs. So this is, so you know on product pages, you typically go on an e-commerce site and you have like the tabbed content. So you have overview, I don't know, specifications, features, reviews, that kind of stuff. It's typically like designed in a tabbed fashion. For this client, Justin Briggs, granted it was implemented kind of by best practice using server-side rendering. He went from actually not having tabbed content, but simply putting it kind of stacked above one another. And you can see here kind of increasing organic visibility by 61%, which equated to kind of 900,000 annual visits in addition. This is a continuation of the Tom Kappa research that I showed you earlier on. So this is looking at, so the idea that domain authority and rankings for higher volume search, for higher volume keywords, especially nearer the top, it's increasingly less about domain authority. Will Critchlow unpacks this further in a Whiteboard Friday. It's almost an extension to the original research. I highly recommend you watching it. He's basically saying here, clear as day, actually what larger businesses, where you're kind of competing for those competitive keywords, what you should actually be concentrating on. And if you look at it, UX testing, CRO, keyword intent research, all those kinds of methodologies inherently are to do with incrementality, making small tweaks which can result over time in something substantial. So this is the definition, how I'm kind of presenting incrementality to you. So if you spend a second reading that. Cool, so by all means, I'm not saying kind of you can't tread new ground. I think that's where kind of the place, there is always going to be a place for content marketing and kind of breaching new ground. But what I think we forget, and this is where incrementality comes into play, is actually refining what's already there and working what you have and optimizing that. So that's kind of how I'm framing incrementality in the context of this talk. So really what we're looking at is a kind of thorough and holistic approach to web search, to SEO, and taking into account, like I say, all those three constructs of a search engine, how a search engine is perceiving that, how your users are perceiving it, just really being holistic in your approach. Now, to frame the power of incrementality, I just wanted to kind of, for the last half of the talk, discuss a case study of mine where I purely kind of focused on incremental gain. So small tweaks here and there just to, basically you'll see kind of with the results and with the visibility that we achieved, it was actually quite substantial. So this is Jamjar. So Jamjar is a car buying comparison site. The parent company to Jamjar have been in kind of car buying since I think like 1997, but it was kind of just individual where you'd go onto that site and they themselves would quote you a price and to buy your car from you. This is almost flipping on its head to an extent with Jamjar. So you'd go on, you'd look to, so they purely do three services. So if you want to sell your car, if you want to scrap your car, or if you want to sell your van. So you go on there with kind of the vehicle you're looking to sell or scrap. You'd go through the conversion funnel, you'd pop in your registration plate, and you'd be served with like a comparison site from different buyers, how much they're willing to kind of pay you. So what's interesting about these guys, and this will be kind of relevant in a second, the domain was previously owned by Royal Bank of Scotland. So that was kind of around 2012, 2015. He acquired the domain and the brand, the client did, around that time. He didn't really launch the site till 2017. And for the majority of 2017, it was there. There was somewhat of a content strategy in place, but it wasn't really doing much for him. It wasn't really working that hard. He came to Impression with a, I guess, relatively modest budget, £30,000 over a 10-month period. And he really, obviously, kind of main goal is to increase visibility specifically for those three topics. So sell my car, sell my van, scrap my car. His suggestion was kind of doing this all bells and whistles, kind of highly visual, highly functional content marketing campaign in a bid to attract links. He essentially had his kind of core landing pages there. He wanted to do that. And we turned around to him and said, look, 30K, so let's say a third of that is towards research, towards ideation, all that kind of stuff. A third of that is towards building an asset like that. A third of that would be towards actually promotion. When you actually break it down like that, and the actual ROI, we basically weren't confident that we could do something like that with purely a content marketing campaign. What we offered to him instead was actually, look, let's really unpack your site. Let's get it absolutely right from the ground up. Let's reevaluate all the pages that are there, and using incremental gains, let's utilize that in a SEO strategy. So first step, I'm doing for time. Okay, first step, so leveraging what's there. So I think this is really key. This is what I was speaking about earlier on. So just using stuff that you can already kind of harness. So like I say, the domain was previously owned by RBS. With that, it came with some really good features and some really good backlinks, which was really great to see. But when we looked at kind of historic visibility, it was quite clear that it came under some kind of penalty, perhaps like Google Penguin related. So we kind of, off the bat, kind of conducted a monthly round of disavow. There is some contention around kind of the application and whether it's still worthwhile to use disavow, but I mean, we definitely have some evidence where it's still kind of working well in specific kind of applications. With RBS, when they owned the brand, there was a Wikipedia article there. We jumped on that kind of immediately in our research. As an SEO purist, yeah, it doesn't give out kind of followed links, but obviously it's like hands down the largest website on the internet. Let's expand on that, kind of make sure Google understands kind of where Jamjar is now as an entity. Again, super kind of high impact, but really kind of incremental. Improving page speed, this was kind of a iterative process, but when we got there, it was pretty slow. And now if you run it through Lighthouse, you can really kind of see it's lightning quick. And then kind of redirected 404s as well. So I don't know how many of you kind of like technical SEOs, but there's kind of a lot of lost link equity there. He had features previously when RBS owned the domain. He had features from the BBC, but they were actually linking through to dead pages. So we were like, okay, well, let's reinstate that link equity immediately. Small tweak, but you'd definitely rather have BBC pointed to you than not. And it's crazy to see how many kind of larger brands are still kind of getting this wrong. This is Argos. Just running them through kind of a backlink tool, you can see 120,000 links broken. And this is from the likes of Forbes, The Guardian, and TechRadar. So it's amazing to see how many people get this kind of wrong still. Step two, almost with this incremental approach, really understanding what the conversion funnel is. So going from kind of awareness keywords, interest, desire, and then over to action, answering questions, or just really just kind of unpacking everything. So off the bat, should I sell my car? When should I sell my car? Should I trade in or should I sell it? Those kinds of things going all the way through to his kind of core like money keyword, which would be sell my car. And again, you can see this kind of, a lot of people are like using this kind of myriad between long tail and short tail and really kind of investing that, implementing that into their content strategy. This is Currys, and Ed will be talking about this more later on and how this impacts their overall visibility. But you can see here, yeah, so Currys as well, kind of using that heavily. Establishing the information architecture. I mean, you can see here, this is actually a screenshot on the right, the kind of length we went to, like really detailed approach, exactly every single piece of content that was going to support his kind of core service page. asking questions like what content should be in the sitemap, how are we going to link between these pages, how are we going to link up the funnel, those kinds of things. URL structures, everyone was considered. Is it going to follow the information hierarchy? Is it not? Is it going to kind of sit on its own? And still kind of information hierarchy is being kind of talked about a lot within the industry because it is kind of leans on this idea of incrementality. Here's a great post from Aaron, who's our founder, if you want to read more about that. And then just gradual content creation and launch. I mean, these were kind of the designs that we mocked up, really looking at kind of keywords and supplementary keyword targeting, almost looking at the information hierarchy per page. This was released actually 3 years ago, but it's really stood the test of time. If you want to kind of look into on-page optimization that goes beyond purely just keyword targeting and into more advanced considerations, this is a really great read from Cyrus Shepherd again. And then step 5, launch and refine. And this is kind of incrementality at its finest. With each piece of content, we launched it, kind of letting it out into the wild, seeing how it ranked through Search Console, seeing what kind of traction it got immediately, what users were kind of navigating to the site from those landing pages, and then really looking at the competitor SERP landscape and working out what those competitors are doing that we're not. There were times where if the content was targeting a long tail keyword, there was times where I'd look over the content and just work out, am I actually answering that as concisely as I could be? Even from just restructuring, kind of streamlining the content, I was able to acquire these kinds of featured snippets. So these ones on your right. And as soon as you kind of acquire position 0, I mean, that's when kind of you can really start building some organic visibility. Otherwise, looking at kind of keyword intent, really kind of analyzing that, really using internal linking and then utilizing Tf-Idf. Is anyone here familiar with Tf-Idf? Apart from the guy's impression. Okay, no worries. I mean, this is a really great methodology. It's kind of, I guess, keyword density on acid. But it's a great tool here by Wright. If anyone's kind of interested about it, I can speak to you more about it after the talk. But basically using kind of maths and kind of information retrieval to work out what supplementary keywords we need to do. Again, at its core, that is incrementality. And then finally, just really audit. Kind of, a lot of businesses would audit once, like every 6 months to a year. It is really kind of a process, an ongoing process. I might be shooting myself in the foot here somewhat, but if I was to do one thing on a technical SEO audit, constantly it is just minimizing crawl waste. So whether that's via the XML sitemap or in the internal linking structure, just really making sure that all links are pointing to live pages, i.e. those with the 200 status code. Making sure there's no kind of redirects in the internal linking structure, certainly ensuring there's no 404s either, not any kind of 400 status codes. And so if we look at, so this is extracted from Search Console. I've actually removed the branded keywords here because he was doing some other kind of offline marketing that we could see was impacting brand. So I stripped out non-brand, but you can see here kind of as time went on. So completed the content strategy around July. At this point, really minimal kind of impressions and really minimal clicks. Following month, kind of launch of the Wikipedia article, more auditing, the content improvements, looking at the keyword intent, refining what was already there, utilizing Tf-Idf. More of that, more of the same. And the best thing is about SEO, when you get it absolutely right, it can really start gaining momentum. And we saw some really kind of impressive results. Hands down, we would not have been able to achieve that with just the content marketing campaign. I think it was incrementality here that really kind of won it for us. And you can see here from the beginning of the campaign, 124 impressions per day. By the end of it, kind of over 9,000 impressions per day. And that equated from 1 click per day, like hardly anything, to 200 per day, which kind of backs out to 6,000 users per month. So rounding it up, just about there. Okay, so never disregard the fundamentals. I think it's quite easy to, but I think this stuff has just proven time and time again to work. I don't think as SEOs, as digital marketers, we should think we're kind of above that stuff. there's still a place for it. Content marketing is no longer the only go-to. It certainly has its place as a qualifying consideration, but there's so much more we can explore with kind of CRO, UX, kind of looking at everything in fine detail. The challenge is, for larger businesses especially, is it does require you to be agile. One of the reasons I shared the jam jar case study was because I really looked at that. He only had kind of 3 core services, so I could neatly silo that. And that's kind of a similar approach that larger businesses should take. So really look at kind of a vertical at a time, a keyword topic at a time, and really building that out. And that's how it's scalable, especially for kind of larger businesses. And that's everything. Thank you very much.